The Giants are 47-50 at the All-Star break, and as we discussed yesterday, it's not really been the fault of the position players. It's been more of a run prevention / pitching issue.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and RotoGraphs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And coming up on today's show, we are going to be looking over the pitching and defense aspect of the Giants' first half of the season, because that has been the bigger issue. I mean, that's not why we're discussing it today. We're discussing it today because it's the All-Star break and there's no baseball going on. The Giants resume play tomorrow in Denver, and pitching is going to be a big key for the second half, because right off the bat, I'll just jump in and say the Giants' earned run average in the first half of the season was 441, which ranks 23rd in baseball. And so, and that's just earned runs. If we look at runs allowed, I mean, it could be even worse. Runs allowed, they have allowed the 8th most runs, right? And so this was a team that on paper looked like it was going to be a good run prevention team. They improved their defense with signings like Matt Chapman, Nick Ahmed starting the season as the shortstop. Tyro's good. Bailey's amazing. Yastrzemski's good in right. Jung-Hoo Lee was going to be good in center. Yeah, maybe you don't love Conforto in left, but you can live with like one kind of subpar defender there. But anyway, and then you had Logan Webb and Blake Snell and some, Kyle Harrison, Jordan Hicks. There was a lot of optimism, and then guys eventually returning from injuries. But the way it played out is that Logan Webb has been Logan Webb, and Jordan Hicks was really good to begin the season, but then fell off as his innings total piled up to a new career high already, because he used to be a reliever. And Kyle Harrison was pretty solid, but did miss about a month with an ankle sprain. And besides that, it's kind of been just a revolving door. I wouldn't quite call it a revolving door. It's just more been an ongoing issue, and there's been injuries, and they've had to scramble to find arms to cover innings. And the result is a 4.41 ERA, which ranks 23rd in baseball. And if you look at some of the teams behind them, I mean, there are some of the worst teams in baseball on this list. The Rockies are last by a full run. They do play half their games in Coors Field. Miami is second to last. The Angels are bad, and they're third to last. Arizona, worse than the Giants at number 27. White Sox, worst team in baseball probably, are 26th. The Oakland A's are 25th. And we find the Giants at number 23. There are some contenders mixed in here. Like I said, Arizona, the Giants are in a kind of contending position. The Mets are one spot ahead of the Giants, and the Mets are in a wild card position. Padres are 20th in ERA. So it's not like every good team has been pitching great. But for the Giants, overall, we'll get into the overall numbers and then the individual performers, and also talk about specific defensive performances as well. The Giants fielding independent pitching it's worth noting that it's 3.91, and fielding independent pitching is exactly what it sounds like. They try to take fielding out of the equation and kind of just isolate the things a pitcher can most control, and that's strikeouts, walks, and home runs, because it doesn't, none of those things involves fielders. I guess actually you could make an argument that strikeouts do involve catchers because of framing, mostly because of framing. So that's something to think about with that metric. But their fielding independent pitching is 3.91 and their ERA is 4.41. And so that's half a run higher for the ERA. Basically, the fielding independent pitching is supposed to predict the ERA. I think if you look at the league average, then the fielding independent pitching and ERA will be the same. Major league average for pitchers, ERA 4.07, fielding independent pitching 4.07. So they're made to be equal. And so when you have teams like the Giants with a big separation between the two, it can indicate a lot of things, but it can be luck. It can be a lot of different things. It doesn't really matter. The point is that, they're not going to rank so poorly in certain important metrics, like, for example, strikeout rate. And this is the whole staff, not just starters. The Giants are 19th in terms of strikeout rate, so that's not great, but it's not horrible, I guess. It's kind of near the middle. In terms of walk rate, the Giants are 15th, so that's worse than I would have thought. I guess, they do have a couple of guys like Blake Snell and others. Somebody obvious I'm forgetting about. That's not, Jordan Hicks, but I think he's been better this year. I know he's been better than his career numbers. He's walked a lot of guys, but yeah, Giants right in the middle for walk rate. If we do strikeout rate minus walk rate, kind of a key metric there, the Giants come in at number 18. The batting average they've allowed, I'm going to imagine this is high. And yeah, it's third highest at 258. The Rockies allow a 285 average against them. Wow. I don't often talk about WHIP, but walks plus hits per innings pitched. The reason I don't talk about it much is because, not all hits are created equal. If you're not allowing power, damaging hits, then that matters a lot. And so to just lump them all together is very kind of a crude way of doing it. But the Giants are fifth worst in walks plus hits per innings pitched at 1.35. This is where the rubber meets the road. The average on balls in play against them, the Giants have at times had the worst average on balls in play against them. So BABIP. And I know this is often thought of as kind of a luck stat, but it's not necessarily a luck statistic or metric. This is just a statistic. So I think there's like a distinction. I should really know. And I do know. I just live on the air, I'm blanking on that. But they're second worst behind the Rockies. And the next closest, Coors Field is just such an outlier that you kind of just throw out the Rockies when you're looking at pitching numbers. So I kind of would call the Giants the worst normal team here. And the Nationals are next closest, 10 points better, allowing a 304 average on balls in play. And the major league average for pitchers is a 288 average on balls in play. So imagine if the Giants were allowing, 26 points lower on balls in play for batting average. And that's what league average is. And so that's kind of where that fielding independent pitching comes in. Like, if they were performing more like league average in this number, they'd probably have an ERA that was like half a run better. And that would make a big difference in their record. Half a run per game. So they've played like almost 90 games? Or is it they've played almost 100 games actually. And so that would be like 50 runs, That's a lot of runs to be underperforming your fielding independent pitching by half a run. It adds up to 50 runs. And then just add that to your run differential. And instead of whatever, negative 24 or whatever, you're like positive 24. And you probably have, you can at least flip the record. Instead of 47 and 50, maybe you're 50 and 47. Anyway, their left on base percentage as a team This is another luck indicator. Is 69.9%, which is 24th in baseball. So they're allowing a lot of hits on balls in play, and they're also not stranding base runners at a very high rate. So you might just say that means they stink at pitching, and some of the pitchers they have used may stink at pitching at the major league level in 2024, but there's also possibly other things going on here. And if we look at just finally some StatCast metrics, because this was pointed out to me and it's a good point, the barrel rate, which is not hitting it on the sweet spot. It's so funny. Baseball Savant uses metrics. They name their stuff things that I would not name it because of traditional names like barrels and sweet spot. Anyway, I want to talk more about the overall pitching performance and get into defense and specific players a lot more in just a minute. And before we get into it, though, first I want to tell you about our good friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. And for me, and for a lot of fans out there, I know traveling, baseball is one of those games that's just perfect for summer travel, really. There's all these cities you can visit every year. These days, you get to see every American League team every other year. And so any stadium you want to go to, you can go to. And any game you want to go to, you can check out Game Time like I do and find killer last-minute deals, get panoramic views from your seat, and best of all, for me, is the lowest price guarantee, meaning if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, here we go. We're going to get into some more overarching numbers, get into some specifics on the pitchers, talk about the players they have coming back, and get into defense. So a lot to cover today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every day or tomorrow, I want to do like a pre-second half mailbag show. So I'm going to put out a prompt this evening on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick, and we'll have that for you tomorrow on Friday as the Giants open up the quote-unquote second half, even though, like I said, they've played almost 100 games, so they're well past the actual halfway point. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So without further delay, I want to get into some of the stuff I was talking about. Barrel rate. So again, I wouldn't have named like historically a barrel, like baseball players think of barreling the ball as just hitting it on the sweet spot, but technically this is like a technical term. It is a tangible, like quantifiable thing, and it's not just how often is the ball hitting the sweet spot. It's not that at all, actually. I mean, you kind of have to hit it on the sweet spot to get a barrel, but you also have to elevate the ball. You can't get a barrel really if you hit it on the ground. I think maybe they make an exception if you hit it like 120 miles an hour. Basically, the harder you hit it, the band of launch angles becomes wider to classify as a barrel. But anyway, Giants pitching staff has allowed the third highest barrel rate in baseball at 8.5%. So 8.5% of batted balls against the Giants pitchers this year have been these quote unquote barrels, which are just like horrible damaging contact, which is horrible damaging contact. And so that's a tough way to live. I will point out there are a lot of contenders that are in this list along with the Giants. The Twins are second worst. The Rays are fourth worst. The Orioles are fifth worst. The Dodgers are 12th worst. Braves are best. I mean, Rockies are fifth best. I mean, it's kind of weird not seeing a ton of correlation between barrel rate here and overall kind of quality of the team. In terms of hard hit rate, Giants are the worst. They have the highest hard hit rate against them in baseball at 41.9%. So this is percentage of batted balls with an exit velocity of 95 miles an hour or higher. And at 41.9%, no team has a higher rate than that. And so when the ball is hit against them, it is hit hard 42% of the time. And that's the highest in the sport. The best in the sport is the White Sox. That is so ironic. Are we sure? Yeah, I'm not looking at hitters. I'm looking at pitchers. That is so weird because the White Sox are the worst team in baseball, and they're the best in this category. So that's just something to somewhat take with a grain of salt when you look at it that way. There are also some good teams towards the, near the White Sox, and there are some good teams near the Giants. Not so many near the Giants towards the back end in this category. But anyway, Giants launch angle, I just want to point out, is the lowest in baseball at 9.3%. So I would imagine that also means they have the highest ground ball rate, which they in fact do by a huge margin at 49.1%. And the next closest team at 46.5%, and that's the Phillies. So Giants by nearly 3 percentage points are leading the majors in ground ball rate. Home run to fly. There's so many things we could look at with pitching. How about just lastly, home runs per 9 innings? It's kind of a telling stat. The Giants have the 6th lowest at 1 home run per 9 innings. So how about the difference between ERA and fielding independent pitching? That 0.5, like I said, for the Giants is second highest in the sport, and only the Rockies have a bigger gap between the ERA and the fielding independent pitching in that direction, where the ERA is worse. The Yankees are beating their fielding independent pitching by about the same amount as the Giants are underperforming their fielding independent pitching. And so this can have a lot to say about your season in terms of runs allowed. So without getting too much in the weeds, there are some other numbers here where the Giants are like top 10, like xFIP and Sierra. They're 9th in Sierra and 7th in expected fielding independent pitching. I do not have time to explain what those are, but those are other kind of advanced pitching metrics. So it's kind of like to be determined exactly where you land on what's the cause of this. But the important point to note is that these aren't the pitchers who are going to finish out the season with the Giants if all goes according to plan, because they have a lot of guys coming back from injuries. And it is worth noting that if you go by simple Fangraphs wins above replacement, you've got Logan Webb leading the way at 2.9, and the next two closest pitchers are relievers. And so that tells you kind of like all you need to know about how the first half went for the starters. Those two relievers, by the way, are Ryan Walker and Tyler Rogers. And then in comes Kyle Harrison leading Jordan Hicks and Blake Snell. Snell obviously missed a lot of time, and Randy Rodriguez. So Fangraphs wins above replacement for pitchers is based on fielding independent pitching. And so a guy like Webb has a fielding independent pitching of 2.79, but an ERA of 3.47, and an expected ERA, which is based on quality of contact, strikeout rate, walk rate, stuff like that, is 4.24. And so that's a huge jump from each of those numbers, from 2.79 fielding independent pitching, 3.47 ERA, 4.24 expected ERA. It's nice when they all kind of align, but in Webb's case, they really don't. And that's why someone like Jordan Hicks, even though he has a 3.79 ERA, the fielding independent pitching is 4.31, about 50 points higher. And that's why the wins above replacement doesn't look as good as you might think given the ERA. So they do runs allowed per nine WAR, which I think is kind of a better way to look at it if you're going to talk WAR for pitchers, because it's just like actual result as opposed to like theoretical. And Webb is at 2.4, so it's much lower because, like I said, that fielding independent pitching is worse than the ERA. Jordan Hicks comes in now at number 2 with 1.3. Ryan Walker still in the top 3, even though he's pitching far fewer innings as a reliever. Tyler Rogers 4th, Kyle Harrison 5th, and then there's a drop-off, and then you've got quite a few guys in the negative, and like Keaton Wynn at -1 with an ERA that's, well, now I'm on a page that's not showing the ERA, but Keaton Wynn's ERA is going to be high when we get back to that page. It is, and he's also pitched 55 innings with a 7.16 ERA. Blake Snell has pitched 35 2/3 with a 6.31, but he finished out the season great. So we will wrap up the pitching, get into some of the relievers and the closer controversy that's not even maybe even a controversy, and get into defense momentarily and before we get into it. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities. Giants head to Colorado tomorrow for a series in Denver, and then they go, to Los Angeles. And I think that might even be a 4-game series in Los Angeles. And those are great cities that are worth checking out. And with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival's city. I should backtrack and say Los Angeles, there are parts, I'm a diehard Bay Area fan, and so to say it's a great city, I'm saying Booking.com can make you a fan of any city, even Los Angeles, and take my word for it, because some of the places I've stayed there have made me a fan of the area, especially near the ballpark. So the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, myself included. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. And if you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has you covered every week, from lowering select players' stat projections on Tuesdays to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. And Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California. So I'm a frequent player. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase. All lowercase is not part of the code. I'm just saying lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB, on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, as promised, we are going to get into a little bit more about the pitching and then also the defense. We're not going to have adequate time to fully cover the defense as much as I wanted to, but there's just like a little bit of bullpen kind of related stuff I want to talk about. How about some young pitching like Hayden Birdsong impressing? And yeah, so thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, a mailbag for opening up the second half. Giants have the easiest schedule, the softest strength of schedule remaining. So, that's something that hopefully gets discussed and is worth me mentioning just randomly here, even if it's not brought up in a mailbag question. I'll definitely talk about it as things get kicked off in the second half. A reminder that you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So Taylor Rogers has a 2.15 ERA. He's had a nice kind of bounce back season. Ryan Walker has been great, and I think should be and maybe even will be the closer for the Giants going into the second half because of the struggles of Camilo Doval, who has a 4.38 ERA. Worth pointing out all the other numbers, the expected ERA, the fielding independent pitching, expected fielding independent pitching are all, way lower than the ERA. But just watching him pitch, it's just been an issue to throw strikes consistently. And he's allowing a 3.47 average on balls in play, which is just very high. And so every game matters. And right now, I think Ryan Walker has just been so good and so consistently good that it may be time to make a change, at least temporarily. And otherwise, Tyler Rogers has also been really good, as usual, underrated and very good. 2.58 ERA, 2.42 expected ERA. All this guy does is go out there and pitch well, and yet he gets, his career ERA is 2.91, which is about 30% better than Major League average over that span. And somehow he gets a lot of grief. I don't know. I don't get it. But, he could probably close games. I just like a guy who can strike people out if we're talking, tense, close games towards the end of the season, trying to get into the playoffs. Anyway, looking at the defense, I do just want to overall discuss how the Giants are doing here. And that is, if we look at, outs above average and we look at teams, I don't think we're going to have time to get into every specific player, but by team rankings, the Giants are, this doesn't seem like it can be right to me. They're last in outs above average. That they must have, I don't know how to explain that. That doesn't make any sense to me at all because they haven't been when I've looked previously. And so I'm going to actually have to open it up and look at each specific player on the Giants. And it still doesn't make sense to me because the numbers don't seem to add up. Could be that there's some kind of glitch going on trying to set the minimum to like as few attempts as possible. So they've had, Casey Schmidt, Michael Conforto, Marco Luciano, Luis Matos, all quite negative, -4, -3, 3.3. And on the positive end, Tyro Estrada, once again, an outs above average darling at +9. But also outs above average does not look at catchers. The catchers have their own thing, and Patrick Bailey ranks at the top of framing, ranks at the top of pop times, ranks at the top of just throwing in general, which takes into account the pitcher's, fault in allowing stolen bases. And then there's a fielding run value metric now on Baseball Savant, where you can see the overall value of all the various fielders in the sport. And Patrick Bailey comes in at number 6 with 10 runs above average. And he's done it in only 528, attempts. I don't know if that's like pitches that were borderline plus block attempts plus like steal attempts. I don't know exactly how they quantify that number for catchers, but yeah, 6th best defender in the sport. And this is a cumulative stat, not like a rate statistic. And Thairo Estrada comes in at number 21, even though he's missed a lot of time. And looking at other Giants, I mean, I can literally just sort by the Giants, and I'm going to try to understand how they would rank last in outs above average. They shouldn't. Patrick Bailey is at plus 10, Estrada at plus 7, Nick Ahmed at plus 3. He's off the team, obviously. A lot of guys in the average range, and then below average, we're seeing Kurt Casale, Marco Luciano, Luis Matos, Tom Murphy, Casey Schmidt, and Michael Conforto. But anyway, I think overall the Giants have been a solid defensive team. Not the best, not the worst. And that's my kind of 2 cents. I mean, I think if you look around, just thinking about looking around the diamond, Bailey is elite. I know he's not the best blocker, but that's the least important skill a catcher has. Wade is solid. Estrada is very good. Wisely and Fitzgerald have done a fine job at shortstop. Chapman may not be what he once was, but he's at least solid and probably better than that. Conforto's not great, but he's it's one spot in the field. You kind of hide him in left there, and it's not like he's the worst defender ever. And then in center, Ramos has done a fine job. Jung-Hoo Lee was doing a good job, and Mike Yastrzemski is good in right. And so I don't really see how that could add up to the worst defensive team. This is just one metric to look at, outs above average. And again, it didn't include their best defensive player in Patrick Bailey in that equation. And if you did, they would vault to a much higher position. But they don't do outs above average for catchers. Anyway, that's my evaluation. They got to prevent more runs. It's been the pitching. And you've got guys coming back like Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb, and that's going to have a trickle-down effect where it kicks some of your worst players off the team. It enhances your rotation. It takes a load off the bullpen. Maybe you make that switch from Doval to Walker, and maybe that helps you out, and you win some games that you should win that you didn't win in the first half with Doval kind of having some struggles. So, yeah, that's the evaluation. And I think they're in good position with guys coming back and the way Snell finished out the first half to have a better second half run prevention wise. It'll be very interesting to look back at the end of the year and see if that's true. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers tomorrow, second half mailbag. So be on the lookout for the prompt. If you want to ask a question, that'll be posted on X or Twitter at Ben Kaspick. A reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance. And thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. We'll have baseball tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.